The ballroom inside, the Plaza Hotel in New York City, was full of light and life. Rich people were laughing, drinking, and talking like nothing in the world could trouble them. Crystal lights hung above them, shining on expensive clothes and polished floors. Everything looked perfect on the outside. But inside this beauty, something very different was about to happen. In one quiet corner of the grand hall stood a small girl named Emma. She looked out of place. Her simple dress and old shoes made her look like she did not belong in such a rich place. Her hands were shaking slightly as she stood close to a grand piano that sat like a king in the middle of the room. People were not really looking at her with respect. They were looking at her like she was a joke. A man named James Miller, a well-known millionaire, stood near the stage area with a glass in his hand. He was smiling in a way that showed pride, and pride mixed with boredom. He looked at Emma and spoke loudly so everyone could hear, "Play something for us, little girl. If you can impress me, I will adopt you." The room burst into laughter. Some people clapped like it was a funny show. Others shook their heads, thinking it was just entertainment for the night. But Emma did not laugh. She did not see it as a joke. She saw it as hope. Her life had never been easy. She had no real family. She moved from place to place, sometimes with kind people, sometimes with people who did not care at all. The piano was the only thing that ever made her feel safe. She first touched piano keys when she was very small, and since that day, she never stopped loving it. Emma slowly walked closer to the piano. Each step felt heavy, like the whole world was watching her and waiting for her to fail. She sat down on the piano chair, her feet barely touching the ground. Her heart was beating fast. She could hear people whispering and laughing behind her. James leaned back, expecting to enjoy a simple mistake. He thought she would press a few wrong keys and everyone would laugh again. Emma placed her fingers on the piano keys, but at first she hesitated. Her mind was full of fear. She almost wanted to stand up and run away. But something inside her stopped her. She closed her eyes for a moment and remembered the lonely nights she spent hearing music in her head. She remembered how the piano was the only place she felt alive. Slowly, she pressed the first note. It was soft and unsure, but it was real. A few people in the crowd laughed again, but she did not stop. Her fingers began to move again. This time, a little stronger. She was not playing for them. She was playing for herself, for her pain, for her hope, for every night she cried alone. The sound was not perfect, but it was honest, and slowly the room began to change. The laughter started to fade. People who were talking became quiet. Even James Miller slowly stopped smiling as he listened. Something in the music was touching them in a way they did not expect. Emma kept playing, unaware that her life was about to change in a way she could never imagine. And in that moment, the whole room was no longer just a party. It was about to become something else entirely. The room inside the Plaza Hotel became silent, as Emma's fingers moved across the piano keys with more confidence. She was no longer the same scared girl who had sat down a few moments ago. The music flowing from her hands was soft, deep, and full of feelings that words could not explain. Every note carried her pain, her loneliness, and her hidden dreams. James Miller stood still, his glass forgotten in his hand. He was no longer smiling. He was watching closely, as if trying to understand what was happening in front of him. The people around him also stopped laughing. Some leaned forward. Others simply stared in silence. They did not expect something like this from a child they were mocking just minutes ago. Emma's eyes were still closed. She was not playing for the crowd anymore. She was playing for herself, for every night she felt alone, for every time she wished someone would care. Her small body moved slightly with the rhythm, as if the music itself was carrying her emotions out into the room. James felt something strange in his chest, something he had not felt in a very long time. The music reminded him of something buried deep inside his memory. A time when life was simple, when he was not surrounded by wealth and empty praise, but by real feeling. He tried to ignore it, but the sound kept pulling him back into emotions he had locked away. The crowd remained silent. No one dared to interrupt. Even the sound of breathing seemed low. Emma's fingers slowed for a moment, then rose again with more strength, as if she had found courage inside herself. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It had become her voice, telling her story without fear. James took a small step forward without realizing it. his face now serious. No longer cold or playful. For the first time in a long time, he was not in control of the room. The child at the piano had taken that away without saying a word. Emma's final notes began to soften, the music slowly settling like a quiet wind passing through the hall. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached the last part of the song. But she did not stop. She finished it with everything she had left inside her. And as Emma's final note faded through the silent hall, James Miller realized that the laughter he had started earlier had already disappeared. Because in its place was something far heavier. The uncomfortable truth that sometimes the people you look down on are the ones capable of moving a room full of strangers, while you are still learning how to feel anything at all.